Welcome back to the Mind and Money podcast. My name is Val, a financial planner.
And I'm Sherry, a financial coach. And today we're answering the question, should you save or pay off debt when you have a little bit of wiggle room in your budget and you have an extra set amount to put towards debt every month? So just going to set the stage of this hypothetical scenario. So you have done your budget and you have an extra $200 to put towards something each month. Now, I'm also going to preface this by saying your budget has included things like short-term savings for car maintenance or annual, your budget's got all the things checked off.
Yeah.
And you have a surplus at the end of the month to put towards something. And you have a variety of different debts of varying interest rates.
Right.
Should you save? Did I already say no money in savings? So no money in savings as far as emergency savings or liquid money in the bank. Mm-hmm. High interest debt, a little bit of surplus each month. Should you put that money towards your debts or should you stash that money in a savings account?
And this is where this question comes up very commonly. And as with a lot of financial answers, it really depends on your situation. It depends on how you're going to feel about it too. Because as Sherry and I were talking about before we started, there's the logical thing to do, and then there's the more emotional thing to do, which provides a greater feeling of security and the sense having that savings there might feel better to some people versus having it that as money paid off on their debt. And then if something happens, we're still going into debt anyways because we don't have the savings to use. So what would your answer be to someone asking you that gives you no other information than what we just shared? You're looking at their numbers on paper, mm-hmm. and you haven't had a conversation. You don't have the ability to have a conversation with them, and you have to give them this is my suggestion. Oh, that's a good one. It would likely be a balance of both. The logical thing to do is put it onto your debts because the interest rate that you're probably paying on that debt is going to be higher than what you're going to earn in your savings account. However, putting everything towards your debt puts you in the position that if something happens, then you have no savings to use. So we're back to using your debt. The other piece is splitting it. So whether it's 50-50 or 25% into savings and the rest of it going towards debt, starting with the highest interest rate first, something like that would be my solution back. If I just had to say, here's what I would do, I would do.
Which I know is challenging without being able to have a conversation with
yes.
a couple or an individual. My answer would be to save first until you hit a specific amount. And that amount is going to vary for mm-hmm. each person, each household. And the Dave Ramsey baby steps, save $1,000. $1,000, in my opinion, has really never been enough for most people, specifically for Canadians, because $1,000 Canadian doesn't go as far. But even in the States now, $1,000 isn't enough for 95% of people, because the reason I say save first is because of future emotional stress. Because if something happens and you have no money saved, you have to put money on your debt. You have to use your debt again to pay for that expense. Mm-hmm. Then it feels like you're regressing. It feels like a defeat. We can't get ahead. But if you save first and put enough away that you will be able to cover most financial challenges. So mm-hmm. this is going to be dependent on
so many things.
Your car situation, or do you have older cars, newer cars,
yes.
no car? Are you a homeowner? Are you renting?
Do you have pets?
Yeah. So
there's so many.
What amount having it in a bank account would have saved you from using debt in the last year or 18 months? What financial challenges did come up? What amounts did they cost? Because then what happens is when those events come up, mm-hmm. you're able to lean on this money that you've got in savings instead of adding to your debt. And then you're able to see your debt trend down, right. even though it's slow. And it's kind of that when you start to focus on paying off debt, my first recommendation is always to build systems so that you're not using that debt unless you're immediately able to pay it off again. So like, don't continue to accrue debt when you're trying to pay it off, because then it's just a cycle.
It's very murky.
And you're never getting out of it. But if you have like $2,000 set aside and you have a mechanical issue with a vehicle and it costs you $800, to take that $800 out of savings and not have to access your debt, it feels so like, you'll feel so proud of yourself, and you're like, hey, this shit is working. What I'm doing is working. And then you just pause that extra going towards your debt, and then you replenish that emergency savings account. And then you're able to see that debt trending down, and you don't have to like take that emotional, like, oh yeah, we're winning. Oh shit.
Right.
Like up, down, up. It's like seeing that debt be a roller coaster is just very emotionally taxing when you're really working hard to try and pay off your debt.
It really is a psychological matter, if you ask me.
And yes, from a numbers perspective,
right,
like taking that extra and putting it towards your debt makes the most sense. You're never going to earn 25% interest on money in a savings account. But it's like the emotions and the financial part of it too. And one caveat, if some of that debt is a payday loan, and you are paying, so say you have $1,000 on a payday loan and you have the rest of your debt is like high interest credit card debt.
Yeah.
I would probably then say like, okay, payday loan, save, then focus on the rest of your debt, because that payday loan she's vicious, and being able to get out of that.
That's it depends, right? And it really is, because then crystal ball as well. What if something happens in 6 months? We can't predict it. So it has to be what feels best for you, what makes the most sense. And I have clients that, even though logic says, and they'll tell me this, they'll be like, I know that I have this line of credit at 10%, but this money sitting in my savings really helps me feel good. That's no problem. I'm never going to go to someone and say, well, that's stupid. You shouldn't do that. Because that's not what financial planning holistically is about, or financial coaching. It's about seeing what works for those people, making sure that there's nothing that can really crazy improve, or giving that guidance to say, hey, why don't we save some to help create that security first, and then tackle down the debt. So
like, the reality is that we're never going to be giving advice to our individual clients without having these conversations.
Right.
But the reality is that today, when we're talking to you on this podcast, we don't know your situation. We don't know your numbers. We don't know emotionally what makes sense for you.
Or if there's something coming up, like if you have a big repair coming up and we're like, oh, we do need to save for that before we pay down the debt. So
it's hard to give general advice.
Really is.
Yes. But just think of what feels best for you, and just kind of like put yourself in like 6 months ahead, a year ahead, and think, okay, if we choose to take this like monthly surplus and only put it towards debt and not build savings, and you have this vet bill or some other type of large bill, and you then have to lean on your credit cards to pay for that, how do you think that will make you feel?
Yeah.
And how like it will be kind of like backstepping any progress you've made on your debt, and like, think about how that aspect of it will make you feel, versus like if you had $2,000, $2,500 in a bank account right now, and it's that buffer, how would that make you feel? And when people start saving money and they've got a little bit of a stash to help them over those financial speed bumps, I fully believe that the things are less prone to come to you. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like you saying to the universe, like, yeah, come at me.
Right.
I've got money for
I'm ready for
these roadblocks.
Yes.
But if you don't, it's like, and I think a lot of it is too, maybe they don't actually come less, but they just feel so different.
Feel less detrimental.
Yeah. And if something makes you feel a stress level 10 when you don't have money in the bank account to pay for it, but it makes you feel a 5 when you do, maybe they still come with the same frequency, but it's just the perception of it
Yep.
because you're not getting to that stress level 10. Yeah, it's wild how our emotions and what we think and feel impacts the decisions we make with our money, but also how we feel about things that we do or have done, and being able to fully understand debt and how it plays a part. And like, if you have put your plan together, your budget, and there isn't a surplus and there isn't money for all of your debt payments and you're feeling really crunched, like, I don't know what episode it's going to be, but like, we chatted with Nicole, an insolvency trustee, about bankruptcies and consumer proposals in Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stigma around that, but go listen to the episode. I'll link it in the show notes. But
I have clients where it has changed their lives to do it. So don't carry so much shame with it.
Yeah.
Go and talk to someone. I say with clients, whenever we're going to have that meeting, just look down that path. Just see if it's for you. It doesn't mean you have to do it.
And you can meet with a licensed insolvency trustee. There will be a free consultation. Meeting with them isn't a commitment to anything. And the one thing that Nicole said that really stuck out for both Val and I was that the most common thing she hears is that people wish that they had started to pursue that option
Sooner.
earlier.
Yeah.
Like, if you're feeling challenged right now with keeping up with your monthly debt payments,
Yes.
don't wait until you're like drowning and you're missing payments and you're just like in a much more challenging position, because the sooner you explore those options, and if you do choose to pursue them, the sooner you're away from them and finish them and get to like move on and be able to get past them and be able to work on starting to like repair your credit and looking at how to stay out of debt moving forward. So like lots of challenges with knowing what's right for you. And it's hard too when you don't have people in your life that you can have those financial conversations with. So know that if you are dealing with debt, you're not alone. There are so many people around you that you think are doing fine because there's so much shame around it. They're not talking about it. You're not talking about it.
Mm-hmm. Things on the outside look great.
Yep.
But what goes on behind closed bank accounts?
You don't know, but we know. And we know lots of people are carrying debt. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, reach out to a licensed insolvency trustee. If you don't think you're there yet and you just want a second set of eyes on your finances or on budgeting, like, feel free to reach out. There's our contact information in the show notes, because the more conversations we have about it, the different perspective, getting somebody that's on the outside looking in that isn't emotionally attached to your situation can be a game changer too. So think about what's going to work for you if you've got that surplus.
Yep.
When it comes to saving or being able to put money towards debt, like, yeah, maybe it's a combination, maybe it's go for one and then the other. And when it comes to saving, think about what amount in your bank account is going to help you with most financial challenges that you've dealt with recently.
Yes. Thanks for listening. This is the Mind and Money podcast, and we'll